Pam Bondi's morning started like any other. The city outside her window buzzed with the usual rhythm of DC, car horns, morning radio, coffee-fueled ambition. She walked into her office holding a folder in one hand and her phone in the other, not knowing that what was waiting on her desk would shake the foundation of the federal justice system. "Someone dropped this off for you," her assistant said, holding up a small, clear plastic bag. Inside, a plain black flash drive. No label. No note. No return address. Pam took it silently. She'd received anonymous tips before. Most were nothing. But something about this felt intentional. This wasn't a mistake. Someone wanted her to see what was on it. Back in her office, she closed the door, inserted the drive into her secure laptop, and waited. A single folder appeared. Bosberg _cases red flags. She paused. Bosberg. She knew the name. Judge Thomas Bosberg. Federal. Connected. Powerful. A man who carried himself like the law bent to accommodate him. She opened the folder. Dozens of files loaded in front of her. PDFs, court documents, email threads, internal memos. Some looked like basic case records. Others were sealed. But one document stood out immediately. Alterations _log_LSX. She clicked. A spreadsheet opened, timestamps, docket numbers, case titles, and edits. Dozens of them. Deleted hearings. Modified evidence logs. Dismissed, no reason listed. Notes marked as accessed from court staff credentials. Others directly tied to Bosberg's login. Her breath caught in her throat. You don't accidentally erase hearing dates. She leaned in closer. Some of these cases had already been reported as closed. But the records here told a different story. Cases that were active, suddenly gone. Charges that were strong, suddenly dropped. And not one of these files had the appropriate legal trail. It wasn't just judicial oversight. This was manipulation. The second file hit even harder. Correspondence.pdf. An email thread. Subject line. Timeline coordination. One sentence stopped her cold. This case must be closed by Thursday. No trail. Her phone buzzed. It was her assistant again. There's more, he said. You'll want to see it. Downstairs on his desk was a manila envelope. No sender, no markings. Inside, a printed court docket. The same case from the spreadsheet. On paper, it had been closed 6 months ago. But the federal database showed it had never gone to trial. Pam stared at the page. It wasn't just one error. It was systemic, organized, deliberate. Someone had buried cases. And someone else had gone through great lengths to make sure they stayed buried. She looked out the window, the noise of the city now a distant hum. Who sent this to her? And why now? 3 years ago, Pam Bondi had walked away from the spotlight. No more political theater. No more primetime debates. She wanted to serve quietly behind the scenes. But this wasn't something you walked away from. This wasn't about headlines. It was about justice. Or the absence of it. She turned back to her desk, inserted a blank USB, and began copying every file. Within minutes, she'd encrypted 3 separate backups. Then she called in her team. Not all of them, just the ones she trusted completely. Verify everything, she said. Quietly. No emails. No leaks. Nothing leaves this office. That black flash drive wasn't a tip. It was a detonator. And the countdown had just begun. Pam barely slept over the next 3 nights. Her team worked in silence behind locked doors, combing through every file from the flash drive. Each document revealed more cracks in what should have been an airtight system. But it wasn't just cracks, they were cover-ups. 6 federal cases, all presided over by Judge Bosberg, had followed the same pattern. Evidence submitted, hearings scheduled, then nothing. No trial. No ruling. Just sudden dismissals cloaked in vague phrases like lack of prosecutorial action or procedural closure. But Pam's team found something disturbing. The prosecutors hadn't dropped the ball. They hadn't even been informed. One junior analyst, voice shaky, slid a file across the table. This one's the Davis case. Scheduled 3 times, dismissed before the hearing even occurred. The prosecutor says he didn't know it was closed until a defendant's lawyer called him, thanking him. Pam scanned the logs. Every edit came from inside the court's own system. Timestamps were altered. Access logs led to 2 clerk accounts, both tied to Bosberg's chambers. Then another revelation. State v. Leon Kramer. Pam froze. She remembered that case. Human trafficking. Financial exploitation. Overwhelming evidence. It had been a rare instance of airtight federal prosecution. Now, dismissed. The records showed it never made it past pretrial hearings. Her voice lowered as she read the summary aloud. Kramer was out on supervised release. 6 months later, arrested in Florida, assault with a deadly weapon. Another analyst whispered, "That makes 2 defendants who reoffended. Both should have been behind bars." Pam clenched her jaw. This isn't coincidence. This is a pattern. And patterns had fingerprints. Emails from the flash drive connected Bosberg's clerks with a consultancy firm based in Arlington. On the surface, it was just a legal research group. But her team found lobbying records, campaign donations, private sector contracts. And then, the smoking gun. A memo from the consultancy predicted favorable rulings in 2 of the same dismissed cases. The dates on the document? Weeks before the court issued a decision. Pam called her lead investigator into her office. "I want surveillance footage from the courthouse. 3 dates. Match them to the case dismissals." The next morning she had it. There he was, a lawyer from the Arlington firm. On courthouse grounds. Speaking briefly with one of Bosberg's clerks. No folders. No formal meeting. Just a nod. A smile. Then gone. 3 times. 3 different cases. 3 visits. Too short to be official. Too consistent to be ignored. Pam stood at the window of her office, looking down at the Capitol. She wasn't chasing a theory anymore. She was documenting a machine, one that moved quietly behind closed doors. It wasn't just Bosberg. He was part of something larger. Something that knew how to scrub records, reroute accountability, and make entire cases disappear without a trace. Later that afternoon, an envelope arrived at her office. No name, no return address. Inside, a single sheet of paper. 6 words. "You're about to make a mistake." She read it once, then placed it in a locked drawer. No fear. No pause. Because if someone wanted her to back off, it meant she was getting close. And if there's one thing Pam Bondi had learned in a lifetime of politics and prosecution, it was this. The louder the silence, the deeper the truth. And this time, she wouldn't be silenced. The hearing room was smaller than Pam expected. No towering judge's bench, no rows of pews, just a long conference table, 5 committee members, 2 silent cameras, and 1 very real test of integrity. She walked in calmly, holding nothing in her hands. Every document had already been submitted. The evidence didn't need theatrics, it needed to speak for itself. Judge Bosberg sat across from her, robed, composed, and at least outwardly unfazed. But Pam saw it. In the tightness of his jaw, the flicker of his eyes, the way his fingers tapped ever so slightly on the table. He was prepared for accusations. He wasn't prepared for documentation. The chairman gave her the floor. "This isn't about politics," Pam began, voice firm. "It's about principle. About a justice system that cannot afford to be quietly sold piece by piece behind closed doors." She opened with the Davis case, dockets edited, hearings erased. Then she moved to State v. Kramer, surveillance, evidence, and a scheduled trial that never occurred. For each, she showed the digital fingerprints. Altered logs, unauthorized accesses, names that reappeared too many times to dismiss as coincidence. Then came the bombshell, Case X, the one that never officially existed. It had no docket number, no public record, only a redacted memo pulled from the flash drive. Charges: corporate espionage, obstruction of a federal investigation. The name of the contractor involved? Quietly awarded a major government deal 2 months later, thanks to a favorable ruling from Bosberg's court. Pam paused, then laid down the final sheet, a scanned invoice. The consultancy in Arlington billed Resolution Advisory Services the same week the case was sealed. Bosberg finally spoke. "That case was sealed for national security. I followed protocol." Pam didn't flinch. Then why was the sealing order never logged in the National Registry? He didn't answer. The committee members leaned forward, papers in hand, scanning the highlighted notes, the timestamps, the connections. It was all there, plain, precise, and nearly impossible to deny. One member, voice quiet, said what no one else had dared. "This doesn't just look like misconduct, it looks like obstruction." Pam met his eyes. "And if we don't act now, how many more rulings will follow the same shadowed path?" There was no gavel, no dramatic outburst, just silence. That sharp, heavy kind of silence that follows when the air leaves a room full of people realizing they've seen something they can't unsee. The chairman finally spoke. "In light of this testimony and supporting documentation, This committee is moving forward with a full investigation into judicial misconduct. Pam exhaled, not in relief, in resolve, because this wasn't the end. It was the start of something harder, holding the system accountable. But today, finally, truth had made it on the record. And for the first time in a long time, the silence didn't belong to those hiding in the shadows. It belonged to those finally being seen.